I'm up here on the Raceville Square today. I'm sitting on the bench in front of Dr. Donor's old office. The building has been empty for a long time. I thought maybe you would be interested in taking a peek inside it today. And while we're taking a peek inside Dr. Donor's old office, we may take a peek into the book of Proverbs and look for some medicine for the soul. But before we do that, this is peak mushroom season. And if you haven't had a chance to get out in the woods yet, during our little nature clip, we want to bring the woods into you. It's kind of exciting to be back in Dr. Donor's old office again. Of course, it was always exciting to be in this office. Although, when I was a little kid, it was a different kind of excitement than now. Back then, I always dreaded the words I would hear. It was like, bend over, drop your drawers. Ah! I want to tell you a quick story that happened in my first church. I was a young pastor, barely 20 years old, in my early 20s. There was this lady in our church that we all respected and cared for her. Oh, she was like one of the leaders of our church. One day she had a heart episode. I don't remember if it was a heart attack or just a scary episode, but it sent her into the hospital over in St. Louis in Barnes Hospital, where she had to have a heart procedure that was very risky. She was older, kind of frail. Nobody knew if she would make it. So we all prayed for her, and I went into Barnes to visit her. And she was such a lady of faith. She was bubbly. She wasn't afraid at all. She was, all just ready for it and whatever God had for her. And it was just really an encouragement to me as a young pastor because I didn't know if she'd make it. Well, she made it through the surgery, but a day or two later, while she was in ICU, she had a stroke. Major complication, almost died. And still I went to see her recovering from the stroke. Such a terrible tragedy. We just weren't sure she would make it. And she was so upbeat, such a person of faith, so just ready for what God ever had for her. And it was like a lesson for all of us in the church, and especially me as a young pastor of this model of faith. And after the stroke, she had pneumonia, and it didn't go well. Took a turn for the worse, and it was touch and go for a little bit, but still her faith held strong, and she made it through it, and I just marveled at this wonderful lady. Well, after the heart problem, and after the stroke, and after the pneumonia, she started doing better. She began to recover. It was time to let her out of the hospital. Everything was great. So that last day of the hospital, The doctors checked her out, the nurses checked her out, and she had a low grade temperature, signaling that there could be some sort of infection, but it really didn't look too bad. The doctors weren't worried. They just said, let her stay in one more day. We'll just watch it and let her go home tomorrow. So I went to see her. Boy, that faith was gone. She was so depressed. She just knew she'd never make it home from the hospital. She knew she was going to die. She just was as down as I've ever seen a person down. And I thought to myself, how could this be that she went through a heart problem and a procedure, and she went through a stroke, and she went through pneumonia, and just a degree or two of temperature that she had to wait an extra day. She just gave up. Well, she did live through it. Everything turned out well, but it kind of left me scratching my head. Interesting thing is, I have seen that play out in one way or the other over and over and over again through my years of ministry. My takeaway from all of this is that the separation between mind, body, and soul is not so great as we think of it in a Western culture. The concept of our soul being something that is of great value and being the godly spiritual part of us trapped inside of a withering body, that's more of a Greek thought that we carry over. In other cultures, often the body, the soul are not as distinguishable. What affects one affects the others. Many times I have seen a person who became discouraged and their health went downhill, or they were very encouraged and it brought them through a terrible time that nobody thought they would make it through, because we're connected. That brings me to the book of Proverbs. What does a 3,000-year-old book have to do with psychology and health, mental health, and physical health and medicine? When the book of Proverbs, and you probably have heard this many times over your life or some derivative of this without knowing that you're listening to a Bible verse. But the book of Proverbs in chapter 17, verse 22 says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Now, in sort of another way of saying this, kind of an antithesis, down in chapter 18, the very next chapter, verse 14, it says, the human spirit can endure in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear? Well, sometimes things get on top of us and it's hard to control our outlook. But a simple word, a kind touch, a gentle look from someone else can make all the difference in the world. I remember one time I was having a really, really bad day. And I don't think anybody that day could have cheered me up, except this out-of-town pastor that was a friend of mine just happened to stop past that day and asked me how the day was going, which the day was going cruddy. And he understood. And it changed my whole day. You, my friend, are contagious. As you go through the day and as you go through the week, your gloominess can rub off on others and just make a shockwave of gloom all around you, or your cheerfulness, your kindness can rub off on others and just bless maybe a footprint larger than what you could ever imagine. Because there's something healthy and healing about a cheerful heart and kindness. Hey, can you remember this? You are not getting through that door until you give me your name and you know what order you're going to have to set in. Then you have a seat over there and we'll call you when it's time. Fond memories. This is a place of healing, a place of physical healing, and a place where kindness helps to heal people. You may not be a doctor and you may not know how to give those shots. Oh, I got somebody talking. Well, that just sort of proved my point. This office has been empty for 8, 9 years, maybe longer. Don't remember how long it's been empty. But just while I'm here reliving my experiences, twice since I've started this, people have just seen me in here, come in off the street, wanted to look around and told me their stories of Dr. Donor. Well, we're halfway through the week. I usually ask God to bless you through this week and guide you and guard you, but I think in this particular week, we know that you are ambassadors for Christ and people to bring healing to the world around us. And may God give you the strength and the wisdom and the character to spend the last few days of this week with a cheerful word, an act of kindness, a look of care. May you be Christ's instrument of healing this week to the world you're going into. Oh, yeah, and oh, yes, this has been a short midweek devotion from the Littleton United Methodist Church.